I'm Rachel Riley and you're listening to the Power of Us podcast, brought to you by Legal & General. Today we're looking at the role of entrepreneurs. Is there a new need for smaller and more agile businesses to rebuild our collective fortunes? Introducing my panel today, we have independent business owner Gemma Lewis of Wattle and Daub Homewares Store. Welcome, Gemma.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you for being here. We also have Philip Salter, founder of the Entrepreneurs Network. Hi, Philip.
Hi, great to be here too.
Fantastic. And last but not least, we have Kerry McGowan, MD of the HR Specialists and also your HR Board Director. Hi, Kerry.
Hello again.
Welcome, everybody. Right, let's get straight to it. First question, we're talking about entrepreneurism. What are the benefits to the society for having a thriving entrepreneurial network?
Well, it's really interesting actually, because last week my little boy brought home a booklet from school, and it was all about what kind of jobs they wanted to do. And there was absolutely no question in there about actually wanting to create your own business. And I was someone that did a very corporate career for 27 years, always worked for other people. And then later in life at 42, decided to set up my own business. And I can really see that the contribution that we make, certainly to the community, is really, really important.
In what ways have you seen your business benefit the community?
So my business is a physical bricks and mortar shop, and I also have an online presence. So there are two audiences, and having worked with other creatives and the community to encourage them to come and create within my business. So there is this effect of this one business starting to involve lots of other different creatives, people that work for themselves. We also run a weekly business meetup, and people that are setting up their own businesses come and chat about how they're feeling.
So much more incentive to stay local when you've got a small business. You've got the employment, you're serving the community and training people up as well.
Yes, definitely. And actually, as someone that had commuted into London, I was quite insular in the way that I got on the train. I went to London and I supported, that corporate. Whereas now that I find myself creating a business that is local, I have got so much more involved in the community. I'm aware of what's going on.
Philip, is that the path of a lot of entrepreneurs in your network, or is it different for everybody?
Absolutely. I mean, that local element to it and solving local problems and stimulating kind of local growth and supporting, jobs locally is kind of critical. But taking a step back as well, I suppose, thinking of entrepreneurs, they're the kind of people who are solving society's problems, and taking an even bigger step back, I guess. We haven't always had this kind of idea, as improving things and making the world better, whether it's solving problems, from climate change to education. This is all driven by entrepreneurs. And without that kind of mindset, we wouldn't be as kind of wealthy as humans as we are now. So it's, I think entrepreneurs are just kind of fundamental to progress and to making the world better.
There's some big points there. So entrepreneurs are going to be the way to solve climate change. I hope that's right. Good luck to you, Gemma.
Entrepreneurs or smaller companies or younger companies are kind of more likely to innovate and disrupt things. And it might be that larger companies then buy them up and kind of distribute them and market them. But it will be often small teams or individuals that come up with the ideas that kind of change the world, which is exciting to be around these people all the time.
So they can be a bit more agile. Do you think in the wake of COVID, it's going to be these kind of businesses that see us through?
What we saw after the financial crisis was that a lot of the recovery in jobs was from people starting businesses or moving into self-employment. So absolutely. I mean, it won't be the large companies. In fact, will be most likely cutting back as kind of government unwinds its schemes, whereas it will be the younger, newer companies and people starting businesses for the first time that will ensure that that unemployment is less.
I'll bring Kerry in now as well. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think from different points given by Gemma and Philip, I agree with a number of those. If you look at the stats from the FSB, that there are 6 million SMEs with under 50 employees in the UK. That was in 2019. And 3/5 of employment and half of the turnover come from the small businesses within the private sector. So I absolutely agree with Philip in that it will be small businesses that take us out of sort of the COVID-led depression. So I really think it's very important that we support SMEs, and more so, they are local, like Gemma says. And with the city losing a number of jobs to Europe now on the back of, shall we say, that dreaded word Brexit that's coming at the end of the year, there will be a lot of people looking for different opportunities, and they won't all go back into employment. Some of them will be starting their own businesses. And that's really important that we support those people with good ideas and good products going forward.
So small businesses are going to be good employers for people who may be losing their jobs. What kind of support do these kind of people need?
They need to be able to have financial understanding of what they're doing, some sort of idea about what model will actually work in an environment. So they need to do some homework, and they need to put together good plans and contingency plans. I think those businesses that succeed are more likely to have a plan that they can deliver and they can continuously review and change and adapt according to the needs. Unfortunately, a number of businesses did not have enough financial stability going into this COVID crisis to allow them to succeed, and some of them, unfortunately, will not survive. Others have been more successful because they've actually adapted to the changes and used things like new technology. So Gemma talks about some of her business being online. Businesses that have been able to move to online sales, etc., they've been able to adapt their businesses to a changing marketplace. Also looking at the supply chain. So Gemma talked about working with other suppliers. It's really important that you talk as a business to the people you work with to ensure that you can still deliver your products or your services. And also looking for new revenue streams. So one of the things that we thought about is what can we now do online that we've not done online before? And I think you can actually service a larger geographical area, because a lot of what you can provide can be online, whereas before it could only be done locally. So it shouldn't be all doom and gloom. It should be, how can we adapt? How can we change to the way things are so we can come up with a new plan and a new way of doing things?
Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you, Gemma, obviously with personal experience of 42, having a complete career change and setting up your own business. Some people might be intimidated at the thought, imagining, needing loads of money to get started and having this, business plan that's adaptable and looks forward for the next 10 years of possible pandemics. Is that how you found the reality?
For me, I would always say it's hard work and it's passion. And it is that resilience, especially during times like this, where you have to just keep going. But of course, the reality is that cash flow is king, and you really have to have that plan in order to know how you're going to survive those ups and downs that are always going to be thrown at us. We need people to come out. We need people to buy and to think about where they're spending their money, and, that supply chain, or, to understand if you're buying a product, where is that product made? Who is it made by?
And do you find your customers are asking these questions?
For a shop like mine, of course, we would encourage that kind of customer, because we talk about that. We talk about where things are made. We talk about how we source them. We talk about the importance of that. But there'll be lots of customers that don't care or don't understand. So it's about educating.
I think Gemma and Kerry have both kind of mentioned a need for, positivity. So Philip, how do we create a sense of optimism to help individuals start up SMEs?
Well, I think that there'll be a lot of businesses kind of started as there were previously after recessions. So I think the government's got some things in place. So there's things like peer networks and small business leadership schemes and other local efforts as well. So I think it's probably better than it has been in the past. But at the same time, I think there's still more that could be done and needs to be done to support businesses, and specifically around helping businesses connect with other businesses locally, and making sure that that's being done and that business owners are meeting other business owners, things like that. Even though it's hard to coordinate, I think they're kind of vital for ensuring that when we do see these, a lot of people kind of taking that risk, that they don't fail for unnecessary reasons. As was mentioned earlier around cash flow, that's something where often people have a good idea, but they're not able to kind of forecast when the kind of tax bills come through, and that's a real pity when that happens. Presumably, this isn't forever, and when there's a vaccine or something, I think people will want to get out and return to life as normal as much as possible. So I think you'll see kind of an increase in spending then, and some kind of positivity at that point. But obviously we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there, businesses shouldn't be failing because of reasons that should be avoidable. So do you think that's a failure of our education system?
Yeah, I mean, as Gemma mentioned earlier, in terms of, people's kind of exposure to entrepreneurship when you're at school, it's virtually non-existent, apart from there's kind of things that the Prince's Trust do and others do. So I think a lot of school is putting people in sets and saying you're good at sports, you're good at this, you're good at that. Whereas with business, it's so broad. I definitely think it should be something that's much more of a part of school, and particularly as obviously the economy is changing and there isn't that kind of job for life anymore.
Gemma, you set up your business, after you already had a successful career elsewhere. Did you find that there was enough training or enough help out there for the actual, the nuts and bolts knowledge that you need to set up a business?
No, in short answer. But I suppose there is a lot of information, but it's actually knowing where to get that information. For some of us, actually, there is, especially when you have children, there are reasons why you might choose to become an entrepreneur, just through trying to achieve some flexibility, not work-life balance.
I think it's really interesting what you mentioned there, because a lot of people would think that setting up your own business means all your time is going to be eaten. But you mentioned there having children and actually wanting to have a better work-life balance.
Well, and it hasn't given me a better work-life balance, let's be honest. I work 24/7 if I'm awake, but it has given me more flexibility because I am my own boss. So I can pick up the children, although that may mean that I work later in the evening. It did give me that flexibility away from corporate life where I couldn't ask for time off. Interestingly, that flexibility that people have been fighting for all these years has happened overnight.
Do you think, it would have helped to have direct experience, or did you have direct experience?
I think if there was more support at government level to maybe understand just the basics of what you might need to learn to start your own business, that would be helpful.
And so that theme's come up quite a lot, having help, having support, having a network out there. I think all three of you have mentioned that. And Kerry, who would be responsible for creating this kind of network, or is that what we need, or is it better to have more industry focused network support groups or more local support groups?
I agree with Gemma in terms of running a business, because I started working for large organisations and set up my own business. So not only do I provide advice for businesses, I'm also a small business myself. I know, because I talk to a lot of small businesses, that there is a lot of fear about spending money on things like mentoring or coaching, as it were, and you don't know where to spend your money in it. Now, if you go onto the gov.uk website and you put in financial advice during the COVID period, you go through a sort of checklist of your type of business, of what support is available for you. What I'd like to see is them to do that in general terms for setting up a business, because it's a great first port of call. Also, job centres. Why are job centres only about if you're looking for a job? Why are they not there for an offshoot of entrepreneurs who want to set up their own businesses? So Gemma talked about when you have children, but also when you come out of university or school, a job may not be the right route for you. You might want to start your own business then. It might be when you've had a career and you want to do something different. So there are a lot of people over 50 starting their own businesses, over 60 and over 70 starting their own businesses. So there are different points in your life, and that's when you need to be pointed in the direction of what possibly you could do and what services you could provide or products. So I think there is more coordination needed by government, but I don't think government is the only answer. You do need other people to come in on board and support the public sector.
Philip, I'll bring you in there. Do you think it's the responsibility of government to curate kind of, big Rolodex of support.
Absolutely. I think the way that was framed is absolutely spot on, because one thing you don't want is the government to kind of crowd out the stuff that's already being done. And as was also mentioned earlier around the mentoring, I think that is the one where government has a role to play. I think it's a very challenging thing to do in the private sector. I think it's a big technology investment. You'd need to have an online element to it, but also a physical element. But I think, it would be quite a bold move. But if it's done properly, it could be really kind of life-changing, I suppose, for the entrepreneurs.
And obviously connecting with people is totally different now in a post-COVID world. Gemma, you mentioned taking your business online recently. Do you think you can still have those connections?
Yeah, that's interesting. But at the time that we immediately went online, and actually I hadn't really built that online presence up, although I'd built it up through social media. It was a sort of skeletal at the time that lockdown happened. So I built that up very quickly over a matter of days, and then took the time to try and get some really good PR over those coming weeks. I also did a couple of workshops via Zoom. So my customers were still getting in touch. They were still wanting to talk. I was fortunate to get some really good press, and that brought new customers.
What do you mean in terms of what kind of training do you do?
So we run a number of different creative workshops, but since COVID has happened, I've built a specific workshop around improving photography, so that obviously what we are seeing now is those individuals and those makers that are unable to go to markets and sell their wares on a face-to-face basis now have to go completely online and have to compete with others, and to ensure that their product looks as good as it possibly can.
And I guess that takes us back to, small businesses being able to be agile and help their local communities again. It's quite nice, really, though, because we're back to optimism, because, you took the COVID pandemic and it, forced you in a way to go online. You've learned all these new skills, all these things that you didn't even know where to start, been thrown in at the deep end, and now you're swimming, you're surviving, you're doing really well. So let's try and, people out there that might be listening that are thinking, I've got this great idea, but I'm a bit nervous. Should they be optimistic? Should they take the plunge?
Absolutely. So many small businesses with great ideas. And even though that they've had to readapt and realign what they're doing, most of them will survive. There may be the odd redundancy here and there, and that's absolutely sad for those individual people, but the businesses are surviving. You can only manage the things that are within your control. So put together your ideas and your plans, and then seek advice on the financials. Accountants are a great place to go, because they really will help you and talk to you about what you need. There are other businesses out there that can support as well. HR obviously is one of them, but you've got IT providers, etc. And as long as you keep an eye on what's happening, you can adapt to your circumstances and use the technology. And there are lots of people out there like Gemma who have made a success of their business, and you can see, what they've learned as they've gone along. That's my positive note.
Philip, your positivity.
I definitely don't think it's a time to think it's bad to start a business now. Entrepreneurs by nature are kind of looking to change the world, and obviously businesses fail. And even if it doesn't work out, I think people imagine like the worst case scenario being worse than it actually is. And actually, yes, it can be hard when a business fails, but afterwards people sometimes pick themselves up and start another business, and then the thing that if you can make a success of really makes your life so much better, because you wake up every day thinking this is what I want to do, and what I'm doing is a good thing, and I'm changing the lives of my customers and employees in a way which I don't think a lot of people necessarily have when they work for a large corporate.
Gemma, is that how you wake up every day?
I am very optimistic. I'm optimistic that actually what this has given us is that it feels like people have taken time. They've taken time to think about what's important. They've taken time to think about the priorities for them in life. What new things can they pick up? What is that one thing that they always wanted to try? I agree with Philip that we've got to have tenacity, and we've got to just keep going and ride this wave and continue to see what that throws at us, but evolve as best we can.
Lots of reasons to be optimistic. There are opportunities in the challenges. You will be new employers. You will be supporting local communities. So the message for government is to possibly create one place to go where there's an active network for growth, where entrepreneurs can, meet each other and provide help and get help. And then the message for customers is keep supporting local businesses. We'll get through it all together. Thank you very much for joining us, Gemma, Philip and Kerry.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Power of Us podcast, hosted by me, Rachel Riley, and brought to you by Legal & General. As we come to the very end of the series, I just want to thank all of our panellists for giving up their time and to thank you, the listeners, for joining us. I really hope that you've enjoyed the series as much as I have, and I hope that at this unique point in our lives, some of the ideas that we've shared have resonated with you.